TypeScript took over the industry, and everyone celebrated. Finally, types. Finally, structure. Finally, a language that treats developers like adults. But nobody stopped to ask what happens when an entire generation of developers learns TypeScript before they truly understand JavaScript. The answer is showing up right now in codebases everywhere, and it is not pretty. Every developer knows the feeling. You write some code, a red squiggle appears, and your brain flips into autopilot. It has become muscle memory. You see the squiggle, you make it go away. But here is the catch. The compiler is not checking whether your code actually works. It only checks if it matches the type system's expectations. Blog after blog describes teams spending half an hour or more every day just chasing down TypeScript's complaints, tweaking annotations, and sprinkling in as any and as unknown until the editor finally gives up. The real work, understanding what the code does at runtime, gets buried under the urge to please the type checker. The focus shifts from solving business problems to silencing the linter. This is not engineering. It is training a generation to trust the absence of red over the presence of understanding. A single cast can bring the whole language service to its knees. In September 2022, a developer posted a desperate Stack Overflow thread. Their Visual Studio Code TypeScript language service had crashed 5 times in 5 minutes. The culprit was a maze of type assertions and an overloaded tsconfig file, packed with strict flags and wild casts. One careless as any slipped past review, and suddenly, the editor stopped responding. This was not a rare glitch. GitHub issues and forum posts show a steady drumbeat of language service failures linked to type system workarounds. Every time a developer force casts a value, the compiler steps back and the safety net vanishes. But the damage does not end with a frozen editor. Hours vanish to restarts. Unsaved work disappears. And the actual bug, hidden behind a green checkmark, lives on in production. The numbers do not lie. Type safety on paper, but runtime chaos in the real world. TypeScript isn't just a language. It is a keyword that can slam doors before a human even glances at your resume. In 2025, 22% of all JavaScript job listings had TypeScript required, right in the hard skills section. Automated tracking systems, the invisible bouncers of tech hiring, scan for that single word and bump anyone who leaves it off. Recruiters admit it openly. The filter is not about real-world code quality, it is about speed. One manager at a Fortune 500 company bragged that adding a TypeScript checkbox cut their screening time in half. Meanwhile, strong JavaScript developers, people who have shipped production code for years, are getting instant reject emails, sometimes within seconds. One candidate described applying for a React role only to be bounced for missing TSX on their CV, even though the company's own repo was still 80% JavaScript. The wall is not technical, it is bureaucratic, and it is built out of a single keyword. Recruiters don't just want TypeScript, they want proof. Coding bootcamps have caught on, rewriting their syllabi to keep up with the market's latest obsession. In the last 3 years, curriculum hours spent on TypeScript have jumped by over 1/3 at major programs. The result? Bootcamp grads who add TypeScript to their resumes see a 13% bump in interview callbacks for the same job level, regardless of whether they can actually debug a real-world JavaScript problem. It's a pipeline designed for the keyword, not the craft. But the cracks are showing. An independent audit found 84 job postings that demanded strict TypeScript skills, yet the linked company repositories were still running on mostly vanilla JavaScript, or riddled with any types and type assertions. The skills filter is out of sync with the reality behind the curtain. Training to the test doesn't build better engineers. It just makes it easier to check a box and move on. Open a TypeScript file today, and you are not just writing JavaScript with guardrails. You are wading through a thicket of new syntax that did not exist 3 years ago. TypeScript 5.0 did not just bring bug fixes. It dumped decorators into the mix. So now you are juggling class metadata and runtime quirks. Const type parameters snuck in, letting you freeze generics at the type level, but at the cost of having to remember which variables are locked down and which are not. Template literal types? Now, a single type can explode into a spider web of possible string combinations that the human brain is supposed to keep straight. Every release note reads like a fresh manual. The language surface area keeps expanding, and with it, the mental bandwidth required to simply read or review a pull request. For a small team, this is not just a learning curve. It is a wall. The codebase turns into a puzzle, and every new feature is another piece you have to memorize before you can contribute anything meaningful. Ben Howdle's migration story reads like a warning label for anyone who thinks TypeScript is a magic bullet. His team took on a 160,000-line banking code base and pushed it to TypeScript with zero downtime. On paper, it was a technical triumph. Under the hood, the process was a grind, with parallel test harnesses, endless rebasing, and a Tiskenfig file that ballooned into a mini project of its own. The language service crashed so often that one developer logged 5 restarts in a single hour. Each crash meant lost edits, broken flow, and a creeping fear that the next cast or assertion would bring the whole thing down again. For a lean startup, this isn't just a productivity hit, it is a risk to survival. The promise of safety turns into a maze of workarounds, and the real cost isn't measured in lines of code, but in hours lost to tooling, not shipping features. TypeScript won't rescue you at 2 a.m. when production burns. The compiler is not your shield. Your understanding is. Don't confuse passing types for real mastery. Drop your perspective below.